Hello, welcome. Hello. Hello, hello. How are you? Alive. That's good. Yeah, likewise. Hello, Tanya. Hi, good to see you. Hello. Do you want our cameras off? Well, no, you can say your hellos first. You can turn your cameras on, say hello to everyone first, and then we'll have you turn your cameras off later. Yeah, it's important for us to make that connection. See each other. Hello, everyone. Hello. Hello, hello. We are just going to wait a few moments for folks to come join us. Hello, just saying hi, everyone. It's great. Hello. Oh, hi. Hi, how are you? Yes, so good to see you. Hi, Marcella. Hello, hello, my darling. And if for those of you who would like to watch the captions, the live transcription has been turned on. Oh, hello. Hi, Sergio. Hello. Hello, everyone. Oh, you're all real small right now on the screen, but hello, everyone. Hello. I think a lot of people have registered. Yeah, over 100, I believe. You got it. Right, there's Marcelette. This one's Marcelette. From New York City. Yeah, who I've been talking with. And Nancy, are you frozen? You look kind of frozen. Anyways, how the rest of you? Okay. It's 28 currently. Oh. Okay, hello, 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 everyone. Hello. Well, you're wondering who I am? I am the president, Marcelette Davis. I'm here in New York City from the New York City Black Deaf Advocates. And we also have with us some folks from George Brown College, Nancy Blanchard. And just want to give a really, really warm welcome for our event this evening. Very special event. So I'm going to allow my co-chair, Nancy, to start us off with a bit of a description and then turn it over to our very beautiful Paula. Are you ready? Hello, everyone. So thank you, Marcelette, President of New York City Black Deaf advocates, and I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. What a wonderful evening. This is nice to see such a turnout. I appreciate you being here. And nice to see all the orange shirts, orange t-shirts, orange shirts. Thank you for that. I know across Canada, our sign for orange may be a little bit different. I believe the sign in the America, in US, in the United States of America is a little bit different. Anyhow, we have Paula here with us to do a presentation, but before we get started with that, wanted to do a land acknowledgement. And it's not actually acknowledgement in the same sign that we have typically used, but to acknowledge means to give praise. So here we have Paula Weasley with us, and she is going to talk more to all of you. So thank you all for being here this evening and taking the time to watch her presentation in ASL. And this information, of course, is available everywhere. The Indigenous communities, different Native communities are using spoken languages, but here we're offering this up in sign language. So we really want to celebrate that throughout North America, what we call Turtle Island. Okay, so North America is called Turtle Island, and it's called that. And you can, if you're wondering why it's called that, you can look at the stories of why that is on the internet. There's lots of stories available. Maybe even Paula might offer an explanation for us. We're going to proceed this evening by acknowledging the land that we're on. So today is September 30th, 2021. Today is Orange Shirt Day. And we're here to consider more and learn more about reconciliation. So today is a really important day, and Paula will be elaborating more on the importance of it. Your responsibility is to collaborate and to learn more about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I'm specifically talking about that because there may be people who are joining us. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission is a commission that was set up to look at Indigenous peoples and of the advocating that they had been doing for a very long time to try to take a look at the injustices that were done. And out of that came 94 calls to action, 94 recommendations on how we can reconcile with Indigenous peoples. Those 94 calls to action include at the schools, and again, not residential schools, not the sign that we typically use for residential schools, because that's for deaf students, and not schools the same way we talk about our campuses, because that really gives us a false impression of what that experience was like. So that sign that we use for government, for schools for the deaf is not the same one that we would use now. Because this was a horrible incident of the government taking children from their families. So we need to learn how to do better and how to reconcile with the community. So I am currently near Toronto, Ontario, and I wanted to recognize that the lands that I am on come from Indigenous community. I'm just looking here. The Mississaugas of the Credit. And we acknowledge that there are a number of different Indigenous peoples who have lived here. There's also the Wendat, the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, a number of different groups. And throughout these territories, going back in time, the Mississaugas of the Credit have typically, these are their traditional lands for many generations. Sorry, my backdrop. My dog's actually causing that. So these are their traditional lands. And that has not stopped. This is unceded land. We took this from them. And so again, We need to recognize that. So we thank them for allowing us to live, work, play, and share their lands. And that goes for all of the territories across the areas of where we are. We are cohabitants. Colonizers, settlers, and I don't know that those words really speak the truth. And when we talk about reconciliation, we need to recognize that we are now cohabitants on this land. The goal is for us to learn the truth, learn more about the history. And it's not even proper to call it history, right, because it's still happening today. They're not getting their lands back. They don't have clean water. They don't have access to affordable foods, and they still don't have appropriate housing either. So there are a lot of issues. So it's not historical in nature. It still exists to this day. So we have a lot of work to do better so that we can all live a fair and just life. When I look at the freedoms that I have as a white female, I have a lot of freedoms available to me, but those same freedoms are not available to others. So for all of us to be free, then I will say that I am free as well. I will close with that. And I'll turn it back over to Marcella to explain the process, the rules for this evening and our presentation. So thank you. Hello again, everyone. Okay, welcome. So some ground rules for us. If you have a question, you are free to either type it into the chat or you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, we have reactions as one of the icons below, and there's a raise hand feature. You can use the raise hand feature, and then our technical team will be aware of the speakers list and we'll call upon you. At 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, those of you who have orange shirts on will be asked to turn your cameras on. We'll go on to gallery view and we can take pictures. And we're going to send that to the New York City Deaf Black Advocates. So for this event, we want to show everybody, showcase that we're all here together this evening. Last, just before I finish up my part, I wanted to let you know that we are not going to have any kind of intermission. Okay, there will not be an intermission, if we're good with that. So again, one more time, just a really, really warm welcome to our sister, Paula Weasley. And we'll turn our cameras off now. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Marcelette, President of New York City Black Deaf Advocates Group, for welcoming me here. And also want to say thank you and miigwech to Nancy for her contributions and working and collaborating from George Brown College. So I thank both of them. And yes, I want to recognize that. So I am now going to thank the audience. I am here with you this evening. You know where you're from. I'm just going to share one thing with you first. Let me just pull up that picture for you. Are you able to see this picture? This is where I live currently. So the red dot, basically, we have Vancouver, British Columbia, which is just above Washington State. I live north of there in Terrace, BC. So that's where I'm from. I'm born and raised in Terrace, BC. I want to recognize that I'm here. Recognize that the government, sorry, recognize that I'm here in Canada. This is Orange Shirt Day. And I went somewhere to have some photographs taken. I've now come back here today. So I'm going to start here with you this evening. Again, an introduction to myself. My name is Paula Wesley. I am Indigenous. And I've grown up in a small community here, as I said, in Terrace, BC. I went to local school for a while, and then I went off to a school for the deaf in Vancouver. At the age of, from about the age of 5 to 10. It was a very difficult time. Looking back now, you know, Orange Shirt Day is really an important day now for me and for my community because of, you know, the experiences from my family. At the residential school. So I just want to share with you here some of my slides. I'll put them on screen. Okay, I'll just give you a moment to read the slide. Okay, so this slide is speaking about, you know, honoring the survivors, those who are still with us, as well as those who didn't make it home. And Orange Shirt Day started back in 2013, and now it is held annually, and it has become recognized in Canada and communities all across this country. And people wear an orange shirt in honor and to recognize the lives, and as part of that reconciliation that we're doing with Indigenous communities and their families. Again, I'll give you an opportunity to read the slide. So Phyllis Webstad when she went to school, a residential school for Indigenous students, on her very first day, as she wore her special shirt that was given to her by her grandmother. But when she arrived at the school stripped them of all of their clothes, including her orange shirt. She never did see that shirt again and didn't understand what was happening to her. So the orange shirt was something that she didn't understand. It was hers and it was never given back. And she saw her other students crying. No one seemed to care. She felt like she wasn't worth anything. Her story, Paula's story, really resonated with many other survivors because they also had similar stories. And this has now become an opportunity to keep the discussion around residential schools open and annually talking about this. Just before I start here, I wanted to first give a warning that what you're about to see may be triggering. Okay, if you need to take a moment for yourself to gather yourself again, that's fine. But I'm going to show you something that is, in fact, something that truly did happen in the past. And this still happens. So we're still finding evidence of this kind of thing. So I just want to make you aware of a possible trigger. The artist is named Kent Monkman. And he's an artist. And what he's drawn here is something called the Scream. So from that picture, I wanted to show that to you because it relates very much so to September 30th. September 30th was basically the start of school. So it was that time in which these children were ripped from their homes, from their communities, and placed into residential schools. So a very difficult time. So 2 questions. Who was it that administered and came up with these schools? And why were these schools created? Sorry, just removing that PowerPoint. I apologize for some of you having a hard time to see me because of a shared screen. So I was just speaking to that picture, that image that we had on screen. And then looking back myself, I too, went to a deaf school, but a very similar experience to other Indigenous individuals having been placed into a school, a residential school. And you got there either by being flown in, maybe being taken in, by train or on horseback. And the reason, that really resonates is because that image that you just saw is, I went to the airport myself, had the ticket, was with my mother, and my mother said, "It's time for you to go, to say goodbye." She gave me my hug, and I had my suitcase with me. And then the flight, the other person that was there for the flight, they went off. They went into the plane, did the screening, whatever, and then I went into my room, got onto the plane. It was quite an older version of a plane, a very small. If you remember some of them, I could see my mother and my grandmother who were watching me. And as I was seated in one of the rows of the plane, and I said, "Mom," I was signing, "Mom." It was very emotional because I didn't really understand what was about to happen, right? I had held a lot of my emotions in for a long time. And then I turned to the person beside me, and we tried to console each other, right? We were like, we were crying, we were nervous, we were scared. I put my hand up to the window, and they put theirs on the other side of the glass and put their hand up to ours. That was a really powerful moment for me. That was like the moment when I was no longer physically connected to them. Sorry, just give me a moment. So still today I am traumatized by that event. Wanted to show you another picture. Yeah, there I've got the right image up, sorry. I'll let you have a moment to read through, to take a look at that. Okay, so you saw that image there. That individual is the person who created the idea of residential schools, and that was our first prime minister here in Canada, whose name John A. Macdonald. So he established or authorized the establishment of the residential schools and provided the funding for that to start out for church organizations and other groups to establish and run the schools. And that happened from 1880s right through. And they administered and managed those schools. And so you can see in the other picture there, the statue of John A. Macdonald has been defaced because people are upset by and traumatized by his decision. And so people who are trying to fight back have done that as a show of their displeasure. So we had churches, uh, different religious groups as well who ran and organizations who ran the schools. And it was a very difficult time. Again, just sharing the screen with you. So on that slide, there were a number of points made. There was a loss of our culture, loss of our identity, loss of our homes, our families, a separation from our families. And all of those things have been internalized by the children, the Indigenous children. A lot of things were taken away from them. And as they were placed into these residential schools, they lost their sense of who they were. So their identities were marred. And that is not, a nice thing that to have happened. This is not, they had no connections to their families as a result of this. Again, I'll give you a moment to read the slide. So can you yourselves, those of you who are here with us this evening, can you imagine yourself being taken away from your home, from your family, and being placed into a school, a residential school? The disconnect that you would have from your family who is very far away, maybe even another province, certainly another city. And regardless of where your family lived, whether it was up north or at west, just being really distant from them, feeling that isolation, and being banned, being told that you're not allowed to use the language, your language that you have used, to know that aspects of your culture you're told are unacceptable. When we come to a feast, we are celebrating, and then we come to these schools where they take that away from us. We're no longer allowed to dance. We're no longer allowed to feast and to have celebrations together. How would you feel? Can you even imagine? Could you handle it? I want you to look here at another image that's on screen. So you can see those numbers there. I've taken that from the CBC, which is, I guess in America, it's similar to your CNN. We have a Canadian broadcasting system here in Canada. And they're showing the comparison of numbers. There was an image with on two sides. You had World War II, Canadians going off to fight in World War II. 1 in 26 were possibly going to die as a result. But for Indigenous children in residential schools, that number was 1 in 25. So almost an equivalent number as going to war. That's a huge number. And beside that, there was an explanation as well around what would happen to you potentially if you did something wrong, if you were punished. There were a number of different punishments that were done to Indigenous children. In one case, if you spoke your native language or practiced your culture, then you'd have a needle stuck in your tongue. Can you even imagine that? Heart-wrenching. And then being banned or having your hands struck, being given the strap. Lots of other things, having your hands shackled, being kept in the bed, not being fed a meal, or the food that you were given was poor quality, maybe at best a loaf of bread and some soup. It was not luxurious, this was not, well fed, good meals. They were practically fed almost next to nothing. And as a result, their health deteriorated, as well as their mental health as a result of that. In some cases, it was almost like being incarcerated. We don't call it an incarceration, right? Because you're there and it's a church or a religious run organization. But could you imagine that happening to you? Right? There's a number of different punishments like that. And we had Stephen Harper, our former prime minister. He did make an apology back in 2008. Oh, sorry, 2005, around the establishment of those residential schools. He apologized for that and set up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So I have another image that I could show around the Truth of the Reconciliation Commission. So again, here, if you just take a moment to read the slide. So hopefully you had an opportunity to look at the images that were on screen. So you saw a comparison. You saw a child, a young Indigenous boy, wearing his traditional clothes. And then one of that same child after this experience of being assimilated. You can see a big difference between what that looks like, and you can imagine how that internalizes within a person, being forced to transform into something else, and basically to transform into a white person. You'll notice the hair has been cut, right? So they forced these children to have their hair cut, their clothes were burned, they weren't allowed to speak their languages, practice their cultural traditions. And so their behaviors were manipulated to morph into similar white society behaviors. And when you can see some of the effects of all of that on Indigenous individuals, Indigenous children. It certainly makes sense, and it makes sense when I think back to myself too. These photographs certainly give proof to the experience. Before my mother sent me off to school, a school for the deaf, I had long hair. And my mother went to the hairdresser to was told that she had to get her hair cut. So for me, at the age of 5, I didn't understand why I was getting my hair cut, but it was cut really, really short. It became somewhat curly. And that was done before I went off to school. I didn't realize at the time why that was happening and why I was always made to have short hair. But I now recognize that that was part of the colonization. the colonization of Indigenous people to make us be like white society. And those have had huge influences both on parents, on my grandparents, because they all went to residential schools. So now that I myself am older, I myself am a parent, I can't imagine that experience. I can't imagine. And I look back at that. I mean, at the time, I've grown my hair back long, and I will maintain it that way, because that is part of my heritage and who I am as a First Nations person. So I just had an image on screen with a number of different words. We talk about the truth, but we talk about a number of different things that we are not privileged to. So water contamination, our lands being taken from us, our children being taken from us, the 60s scoop. A number of different things in terms of employment, unemployment, lack of training, lack of opportunities to employment. The welfare system, which is similar to social assistance that you might have in the States. So you can see there's a number of things that have had an impact. This truth of what's happened to us has had a huge impact on us, on each and every one of us. These are our truths right now, and that's why the truth is at the top of that list, because that is the truth. There's water contamination. Our land has been taken from us. Again, take a moment to read the slide. Okay, so on that slide, we talked about in Canada, I think we have more up-to-date information, but these are rough numbers. There are roughly around 6,000 children who have been recovered. In the States, it's just over 1,000, so just over 5,000 in Canada. And I'm sure there will be more that will be found. So this process is not ended yet. We're still searching. And that's what we need to do as part of reconciliation. We need to go to each community where there was residential schools, the church properties, whether they were from the past or even the ones more recently. Some of those lands have been transformed now into communities, to farmland and other things, but we need to go back and find them and to think about those numbers across Canada. I'm not sure about the States, but I'm sure you probably have more as well. Your system's a little bit different, but we are aware of about 1,000 there. So this has had a huge impact on Indigenous communities in all of North America. Really heart-wrenching. This is Nancy was saying earlier, this is Turtle Island. So Turtle Island is one of, is Indigenous, is made up of a number of different Indigenous communities. And we want to be recognized for that this is our lands. That I just showed you a number. Those are some statistics, but really, I wanted to show the facts. These are the facts. These are the truths. Those numbers that you saw, right? Our elders and those who have survived the residential school system agree that those numbers that were shown there from the various communities and the number of bodies that have been found, buried, unmarked graves of our Indigenous children. And those numbers are not the end of it. We want to pay homage to we want to acknowledge that. I'll let you read the slide. Oops, sorry. You're not able to see anything at the moment. Give me a moment. I forgot to share the screen. It seems to be disconnected. It's not working. Oh, this is odd. I can't see myself now on Zoom. I don't know if I've disconnected. Well, I can't see myself on Zoom here. This is odd. It seems odd. You can see me, but I can't see myself. I'm sorry, folks. Technical issue here. Give me a moment. No, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, I may have to do this, so bear with me, folks. Okay, technical issues come up, so I thought I'd take this moment now with all of you watching to suggest that you take a look at the TRC and the 94 calls to action. So you can have a look at the website, TRC website. You can look at native-lands.ca to also see where you are situated, what traditional and treaty lands you're on. Oh, great. Paula is back with us now. Technical issues. Oh, poor interpreters trying to do technical things as well as interpret for us. Wow. Thanks to the skills of our interpreter. She works at George Brown College herself and has joined us here this evening. So did we make it there? We should be given her co-host capabilities. Okay, well, perhaps I'll just do a share screen for you, if that's okay, Paula. Paula, can you see me? Yeah, so I'll do the screen share for you then, since this isn't working for you. Okay, I'll support you through this. So I'm just going to turn off my camera now. Which slide? Keep going, keep going, keep going. Number 19. Nancy, can you do it in such a way that we can share the screen? All right, well, Nancy is, oh, there we go. Okay, it worked. Whew. See, technical, thank you for your patience during these technical issues. Thank you, Nancy. You can take it off screen now. So I apologize for those technical issues. Of course, timing is horrible for that, but in any case. So I think that Indigenous peoples and Deaf peoples have a very similar experience, and I don't want to speak to that. So Indigenous peoples have been taken from their homes and placed into residential schools, where they lost their language and were not allowed to use their language. Their culture was taken from them, and basically their identities. They were asked to conform and to be and behave like a white person. And I think the experience for deaf individuals, for deaf children, they also are taken from their families and put into schools, live in a dormitory. And so that's a very similar experience for them. And I think back in 1880, if you're familiar with the International Congress on the Education of the Deaf, won't get into the great details there, but at that time, they came to a decision that deaf children and deaf people should not be using sign language. And so their language was also taken from them, much the same way it was taken from Indigenous communities. Children were not able to communicate with their parents, as many of their parents don't sign. Many of them were told to use speech or lip reading as much as possible, or speech reading as much as possible. So I think the experiences between deaf individuals and Indigenous individuals is very much the same. Nancy, can I ask you to bring up the next slide? You want me to share that slide? Okay.
Cool.
Again, some additional technical difficulties. Well, while Nancy tries to do that, perhaps I'll just add that, you know, I've enjoyed the day today. Hope you've enjoyed it, enjoyed the presentation. I wanted to let you know that I am an artist and a sculptor, and I also teach. I teach youth and young adults, and I work with elders and chief in my community. And so I do a broad range of things. And I work with the community in terms of our language, trying to get our language back. And here in British Columbia, I've flown from Vancouver, BC. I fly back and forth to my home community in order to give presentations, to get involved in ceremonies, the dancing, and to do the art work, and a storyteller as well, and a historian as well. So there's quite a number of different things that I do. And I've been learning and continue to learn from my parents, my grandparents. They're the ones who have taught me and have made me into the person I am. And I am so grateful to them for supporting me. Okay, I think Nancy's got this worked out now. Yes, so I'll give you a moment to look at this image. Can you, next slide? Or take it off screen for us. So in that image, just very briefly to speak to that, on the one side, you had native ways, and on the other side, you had deaf ways, and you'll notice a lot of the similarities. You can see a before and after. You can see, for example, long hair to start with, and then shorter hair. And also the clothing. You'll notice the different clothing. The clothing is more like European. And I think that's a very similar to experience to what deaf individuals went with. Okay, could you share the next slide, please? Next slide. Well, oh my goodness, I didn't realize we're already past 7 o'clock. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure if people are prepared to stay or not. I just want to do a check-in, perhaps with Marcelette. If it's okay, if I should continue or not. I don't know how strict you are in adhering to those timeframes. I know that the technical dilemmas caused some of that, so it took some of my time away from me, but am I good to continue for now? Yeah, or we should do a wrap up then, because we've kind of run out of time. So, oh. No, okay, no, we don't have to hurry then. We can carry on. Thank you. Just seeing that in the chat now. Whew, I have time to breathe. So when we look at the experiences of deaf individuals and the experiences of Indigenous individuals, it doesn't matter what sign you use, Native, Indian, Indigenous, First Nations, different signs that we have. They're not wrong. All of them are okay. And of course, though, in ASL, we have certain rules in terms of like how to produce signs. If you're from the East or from the West, for example, in California, we sign differently on the East Coast than we do from the West Coast. So, you know, there are geographical differences in how we sign. And so I think the same thing, that in Canada, we have our own, you know, in the States, I don't know about, but here in Canada, we have provinces, which are similar to states. And in ASL, we all have accents, if you will, depending on geography, where we're from. So my signs as an Indigenous individual, you know, as First Nations, my sign for First Nations is different perhaps than others. So my signs may be a little bit different than others, but and so I don't think, you know, we criticize others for the signs that they use. I'm sorry, do you want to share that slide for us, Nancy? Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Sorry, I'll give you a moment to read this slide as well. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. So just in relation to that slide, I wanted to make sure that we spoke about the Black experience as well, and the Black deaf experience with ASL. And again, as I've come to understand, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement has certainly exploded, and all around the world, we're seeing that people are coming to reckon and understand that experience as well. And we don't want to turn our eye away from that. You know, we need to open up our eyes, our ears, our hearts, and recognize this, that this is not a transformation that's going to happen overnight. This is going to take time for us to heal, but the Black Lives Matter movement really had an impact on us. And even before that, you know, we have seen protests. And we're still here today, despite the attempted genocides. We're all still here. So a lot has happened in the history, and we need to be aware of it. We need to listen. We need to listen to it. And so Black Lives Matter, same thing. It's the Indigenous Black Lives Matter movement is recognizing the Indigenous community, which is wonderful, and our protests as well. But there are a number of events, a number of actions that people have been taking. And I think that with ASL, I wanted to speak to that myself too, that I've looked at ASL, I've looked at information out there. I've met a number of Black deaf individuals who speak about their experiences as well. And I've learned quite a bit. I'm learning every single day. I'm trying to decolonize myself from some of the understandings that I've had as a person of color. We all have something to learn. And I find it interesting that, you know, when we talk about ASL, that we don't often speak about the Black community and their experiences with it. There were segregated schools, including segregated schools, deaf schools. So white deafs went to one school and Black deaf individuals went to another school. And I didn't realize that. And, you know, and came to realize that as a result of that, that the Black deaf community had their own ASL, their own way of communicating with each other that came out of that. And I think in the, sorry, I'm gonna get this right. So from 1925, there was a African-American couple who tried to join the National Association of the Deaf, NAD. There was a convention or something, and they were barred. They were not allowed to enter. And that was shocking. And it was just an example of the racism, and to show that the racism existed, the discrimination existed. That ban was in place for over 40 years. And this is something that, actually happened, that my conversations with the Black deaf community have come to learn this. So, I think that there are a lot of parallels between the struggles and the experiences. I mean, 40 years is a long time to have been banned. And, and the dysphoria, right? The African dysphoria has experienced this, and it's a very disconcerting thing for them that moving here onto these lands, and you can't not being able to celebrate your own culture here in these lands as well. So there's a lot of parallels. So we need to continue to push for equity, to push for and for different chapters, for NDBA to have different chapters. Nancy, I'll ask you if you could share the next slide, please. So here, what is it that you can do to learn, to watch? How can you get involved? And I would encourage all of you to do just that. Get involved in the community, in events that the community hosts, read books, watch videos, meet individuals, attend powwows. If they're happening in person near where you live, attend them. Speak with Indigenous individuals, Indigenous individuals, deaf Indigenous individuals as well. I would encourage you to learn more about Indigenous culture, identity, and to learn more. This day is all about learning from each other, regardless of our skin color. It's about decolonization. It's about learning to do that. We, as deaf individuals, were forced to use spoken language, not sign language. We were banned from using sign language. We had our hands bound behind our backs. We were forced to utilize speech or hearing. We have hearing aids, cochlear implants, where the emphasis is still on our ability or lack thereof to hear. And for the Black community too, not allowing them to use ASL, their Black ASL, but making them conform to standard ASL, the white people's ASL. So it's important that we take pride in our cultures and our individualities and our identities. And so we need to continue to learn. We're always going to continue to learn more about each other. I think we might be at the end. Next slide, keep going. Great. Give you a moment to read that, but I think you can probably move to the next slide though. Okay, and to the next one. Thank you. Okay. Where are we at now? Okay, thank you. Sorry. Go ahead. Yep, just if people can turn their cameras on, just introduce yourselves, whatever, just show our faces at the very least. We'd like to, as we said at the beginning, we'd like to, those who are wearing orange shirts, have you stay on with your cameras so that we can take a photograph and do a screenshot. So everybody put on your best smile. Are you ready? Okay, everybody, are you ready? Okay, are we ready? All those with orange shirts. Those who are wearing orange shirts, please leave them on. Please, your camera's on, and we'll take a group shot. Who are we missing? Are we missing anyone here? Hey, awesome. Wait a minute, do we need to do another screenshot? Like, was there more than one screen? You were able to get everybody on the single screen? Yep, we got them. Okay. So now we're ready for any questions that might be had. Hello, sorry. Just getting dragged away here, but coming back. So nice to see you, Paula, again. And here's the orange shirt. Yes. As a Black, African, white American, Indigenous individual, I guess my first thought when I took a look at sort of who I am, I recognize the identity. I'm an African American. And I say white too, because I feel like, there's this connection to the Native community. And I kind of feel like I got lost in that. So Paula, when you started speaking, I really felt the connection to you. I feel like I wanted to connect with you, that this was my identity. My family is Indigenous, from Africa, white, whatever, like this mixture. But so I really want to thank you so much for your presentation this evening. I really appreciate you. My big question, but actually I have three if I'm so permitted. Really felt for this idea when you talked about being on the plane and putting your hand up to the window and your parent or your family putting their hand on the other side. That feeling of being, going off to a school for the deaf, but not really understanding. Like, do you have any sense of what you were thinking at that time when you were trying to make that connection? Okay, just wait. I'll explain to you in a moment. Sorry. So what were you thinking? I mean, you were so young. If you don't mind, could you speak about that time and what you were kind of thinking in the moment? Like, where did you think you were going? Or did your parents prepare you in any way? And I guess my other question is, I also think it's quite interesting that the image that you had of the Indigenous person there with their clothing on, and then standing beside that, all dressed in what I don't know, Canadian attire, I guess, or so hearing or deaf, whatever. I think the experience is very much the same, but that picture, it really, that assimilation that was had, instead of taking pride in us as a deaf individual, but it's just like, no, I'm assimilating to this white culture. So I'm wondering about your experience with that. And also, third one, give me a sec. If we make a comparison between the past and to where we're at now, do you feel like there's been any improvement? People are always struggling, we're always fighting for justice. This is never going to end necessarily, but I turn it over to you. There's no justice and no peace. respond to your first question then about putting my head on the window. Yeah, I guess, that's always been with me. Even to this day, I still remember that moment very clearly in my mind. So yeah, I'm looking at the adults may have had a different perception of it. And maybe they were aware of it. And I knew I was going off to a school for the deaf, but did I understand really what that meant? Like what that means to get on a plane and fly off and be away from your family? I thought maybe I'd be back home, like maybe by the weekend, right? So I think, you kind of expect, okay, I'm going to school, maybe you think Monday to Friday, but you don't expect that to last for weeks and months on end, right? I mean, we maybe went back at Christmas holidays or something. So, like you only be able to see your family then like one time out of a school year. So that's why I had that loss of my culture, not understanding. I was at the age of 5. You don't appreciate, you don't understand this, and looking at, and of course, those people who are around me who were talking about things, I'm certainly not understanding anything that they're saying. And my mom, nudging to my mom and saying, like, don't these people sign? So she had to be pretty creative because my mother was mainstreamed. And for her parents as well, like trying to understand what was going on. Like I didn't understand, right? There's a lot you didn't understand as a child about why things are happening. I just remember feeling that disconnect. I can't imagine for people like having your baby ripped away from you. I'm sorry, what was the other question you had for me? Just around that picture, that assimilation picture. Yes, thank you. I chose that picture, right, to after doing a little bit of research. I wanted to sort of show that distinction, that difference between the deaf experience and the Indigenous experience, and the regalia that and the clothing that the Indigenous individuals would wear, and then how they were forced to assimilate and wear that clothing. So I think, we had our own culture, we had our own dress, and then you get sent off to the school where they take all of that away from you. They cut your hair, they change your clothes, they want you to conform, to be like white society and to behave like a white person behaves. And then the same would be true for deaf individuals. They want you to behave like a hearing person. So I think that picture really demonstrates that. And for me, that picture was really impactful. I think it really showed that the culture was taken away, that genocide, and how that's had a huge impact on the community since then, right? You've got systemic oppressions that continue to happen. And I don't know about you, but in British Columbia, right, we have our Black community here is still fighting for equity. Right? There's just a whole number of issues that still persist. To your third point, sorry, that was so making a comparison between now and the past. Do you feel like there's been any improvement to our rights? Do you think, or do you feel like we're sort of in the same place we've been, or is anything any better? Well, I know that for myself, and I can't necessarily speak for others, but for myself, certainly there's not been 100% improvement. We still have a long way to go, a lot of work yet to do, right? I think a lot of children don't understand their rights, boundaries. We don't understand certain boundaries. Children just are naive to that. They don't understand. We don't understand the idea that that they, your personal space, their personal space, the fact that somebody could cut your hair, there's somebody that can tell you that you're not allowed to sign. Those things are always changing, and I don't know, change always happens. Things always evolve. And so, there have been some changes.
Monique, if you like, I can jump in.
Sure.
Are you good, Monique?
Sure.
So sorry I have to interrupt, Paula. So now it is 7:25 p.m. And it's really past the time that we had established for the presentation today. So again, it's very important for a very important person, and we want to thank Paula for her presentation. And also we'd like to thank Monique, who voiced all the way through for this presentation. We really would like to thank Monique for taking on the task of doing so solo. Many thanks to you, Monique. For voicing for Paula during this event. So before I wrap up, first I'd like to thank Nancy and Paula and you all who all joined in to support this event. And also those of you who wore your orange shirts today. Thank you for your partnership to all of you. I mean, it's been such an inspiration to New York City BDA. And stay tuned. We will have more events. And again, we'd like to thank you all for participating in this event. So the next event is Saturday. It's the first Saturday of the month of October. And it's related to exercising. So please, if you're interested, please join the event for October the 1st. So we'll give you a menu. So it's on October 1st, October 4th, the next event. And when you participate in that event, you'll be pleasantly surprised at what will be in store for you. So again, we're going to wrap up and we'll let Paula have the last words. And thank you again, everyone, for participating in the event. So thank you all. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for participating tonight and supporting me through this my presentation. Thank you.
I've got to turn something in. I hate some better cards, but with all the work Mike has got to do, maybe it's not a bad choice. We'll save some time. I keep dropping and the paint wood.